Okay, a sketchbook in my pocket. I've been making these little mini concertinas sketchbooks for myself. And I thought I would just share this with you. I thought it would be really nice this month in the group if we were all to be sharing how we can represent each of our environment around us where we live. And it doesn't matter whether that's just around your garden or just around the streets where you live, or whether that's a wild or longer walk, whether that's coast, wherever you are. Or even if you're indoors, you can do this, because you can just do this by going around your house and just looking out of each of the windows of your wherever you live, and sort of doing a journey with your eyes out of your windows. And I just love, when I'm thinking about getting out and about and sketching, to have something that's already got something on the paper that isn't just that sort of daunting blank white paper. So that's why I've been making these, and I'm going to show you how to make them. And it's very simple. Nice to do with children as well. Really nice, easy activity that you could be doing with children as a kind of holiday activity if you wanted to. So what you'll need is some paper. Now, printer paper, just flimsy printer paper, is absolutely fine, that size. I use some slightly heavier cartridge paper. But this is also fine, and that will make a really tiny sketchbook. That will make a really mini one, which really can go in a pocket. If you want to make this size, which I personally like, I find this just right for me. It still fits in a pocket, but it's got slightly more space for drawing. Then you're going to want double this size. So in the UK, this is A3 size, so double printer paper size. You're going to need one paintbrush, and one paintbrush only, and you go and raise your garage if you can. Find a decorator's brush, because you want a nice chunky brush for this. I mean, you can get away with something like that. That's fine. That's a number 12, I think. I've got that one as well, but I'm going to use this one, a favourite of mine. And you need it to be dry. Don't use a wet brush for this. You need to be starting out with a dry brush. You'll need a little palette of some sort. I'm just using a little supermarket tray here. And you'll need 2 tubes of paint for this, 2 colours. And I've got phthalo blue and red ochre, an old tube of red ochre I picked up. And I picked that one up because the fields in here, in the soil in Devon, where I live in the UK, is often this red ochre colour. So I thought that would work quite well. You can choose any 2 colours you want for this. You might just want to experiment first of all with how they kind of mix and layer together, because you don't want to find you've got horrible colours you don't like. I happen to know that blue and brown work really well, and if in doubt, I suggest go with blue and brown, because it's great, sort of they're great landscapey colours. This one I did with burnt sienna and ultramarine, a more sort of this more bluey blue, and this one was with phthalo blue and burnt sienna. So phthalo blue is a more turquoisey colour. So 2 tubes of paint, a dry brush and a palette. You will then also need some water available to you. And then when we come to the next stage of compiling the sketchbook, just so you're ahead, if you want it to be a hardback sketchbook, we can slip some card in, which gives a hard cover at either end. So you'll need some card. That could just be packaging, bits of packaging card or cereal packet. You'll also need some masking tape or sticky tape, because there will be a bit of sticking, and some scissors. So there's some cutting and sticking. And if you want to do a hard cover, you'll need some glue. So I've just got this kind of school glue, this PVA glue, but a glue stick is also a good option. And when it comes to letting these dry, when we've stuck the covers, I just find it useful to have a weight to hold everything down with. So I've got a couple of tins of beans here to weight everything down. So let me move a few things out of the way. And just because all I need is my brush, I'm going to do 2 pieces of paper here for you. So I just need my dry brush and my 2 tubes of paint. And I'm going to put out some of my paint in, I'm just going to make sure you can see this okay, in my little palette here. And we're thinking about wet and dry here, dry and wet paint, because what I love about acrylic paints is that we can use them, we can water them down and use them more like watercolours. Or we can use them very dry or thick, more like oil paints. This is something we talk about more on the Adventurous Painters programme, which I'll say a bit more about at the end. So we're going to start with dry. We've got our nice dry brush, so we're going to start with dry. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to get a bit of this paint on my brush. I'm going to get both my colours. I'm going to see what happens when they mix. And all I'm going to do is get some of this paint on my paper in a pretty scrubby, dry way. There's a word for this, there's a name for this, it's called scumbling. It's using a really dry brush. So that's all we need to do. Make sure you go off the edges, just some nice, dry, loose brush work. And I'm going to do my bigger piece now as well. So I'm just going to put out a bit more of this red ochre. Go with a bit of that to start with. So it's almost like shoe polish here. You don't want too much paint on your brush. And I'm just going to do a sort of bit of a random thing here with my dry brush. See how we get these lovely qualities with a dry brush. Turning my paper around. Some nice movements and mark making. A bit of rubbing and scrubbing here. Okay, and that's all we're going to do for stage 1. What we're now going to do, the next stage, is wet. So I'm now going to wet my brush. I'm going to come back over. These dry so quickly, I'm not worrying about letting this dry. And I'm now going to use my paint wet. Really, really wet. So I'm adding plenty of water here so that I've got some really nice watery paint, because I'm now going to use my paint more like watercolour, and I'm going to do some just interesting, nice thin watery paint across the surface of my paper. And then I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to get a bit more of my brown, my red ochre for my second piece here. So I'm not worrying about my paints mixing too much here, because I want these colours to mix and mingle. And I'm now going to get some of this brown, this red ochre mixed up nice and wet. But as I say, I'm not worrying about my colours mixing. I want these colours. So just wet on dry, wet over dry. watering this right down. You can even do some dripping and spattering if you want. It can be nice. So, okay, so now we need to leave these to dry. I've got two nice pieces here, which I'm going to leave to dry, and I will come back. Okay, my papers are dry, and I've got lots, and I recommend that you make plenty as well, because these are really, you can play with these, and any that are left over make really nice collage papers as well. I did another variation with some red, just playing around with another colour combination. So I'm going to show you now how to make this into your sketchbook. So let's take one of these. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to cut your paper in half lengthways. So I'm going to fold it. And it's worth being a bit careful about your folding and cutting here. So I'm folding my paper in half, cutting it lengthways. I'm then going to fold each of these pieces again in half. And again, I'm just trying to be fairly accurate with my fold. Make sure I'm on camera here. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stick these together. So I'm just going to line them up, and I'm going to use a little bit of masking tape for this. I never try and stick in one go. I always put a little bit at the top and a little bit at the bottom, and then I put a piece just to make sure I've got it joining up nicely. Oops. It didn't join so well. And now I can put a longer piece on. Masking tape or sticky tape, sellotape, doesn't matter what you use here. And I'm now going to refold. So I've got a nice long piece here. So I'm now going to fold each of these in half. And then I can start concertinaing because I've got my halfway point. And just look at these gorgeous sketchbook pages. Oh, what was I doing? I need to do that one halfway. My join. Every one of these little pages is an absolute delight. So here is my mini sketchbook that I can now be using to draw. Some lovely mark making here. If you want to make a hardback, if you want to make this a hardback sketchbook, checking this is videoing okay, great. If you want to make this a hardback sketchbook, all you need to do is stick some card in the two ends. So I'm just going to cut, and I'm not even being terribly accurate about it, but I'm just going to cut and maybe just trim a little piece of card that can just slot into the end cover And I just want to make sure my paper folds down over it. I'm using some of my PVA white school glue just to put some glue on here. I'm going to stick my little cover in, make sure that folds down well. Then I can put some glue on the card. Oops, making a mess here. And this is where my can of beans comes in, because I can then put a can on there to weight that end. I can now come to my other end and do the same. I'm not being terribly accurate about this, as long as it's roughly the right size. Just gives a bit of reinforcement. Am I off camera? No, I'm still on camera, good. So, a little bit of glue, my little piece of card, and then a bit more glue on my card. Then I can fold the whole thing over. Just make sure it sits nice and flat. Can of beans on the other end. Okay, I'm going to come back to that when it's dry, and I'm going to make another one, and then I'll talk about what we can use these for. Okay, so I now have some really lovely little sketchbooks that I've created, and they're just lovely things in their own right, these little books. And for me, they just really invite drawing, because they're not presenting me with that intimidating blank white piece of paper. So the reason I suggested you make plenty of paper is that you can have a play with materials before you set out. If you are heading out on location, you might be doing this from memory or imagination, or from inside your house or in your garden. But if you're going out on location, you want a nice little limited range of materials to take with you. And you want materials that are going to show up well over your colours. So I'll just show you the range that I've been exploring. So permanent marker pens are lovely, particularly for me if you use them on their side. They give a more characterful line, really nice for drawing bold shapes and lines and areas of dark. Fine liners are lovely too. I mean, I love that contrast between a thick line and a thin line. Ballpoint pens are also nice, I find, for fine marks. Pencils, of course, drawing pencils. Probably you want to go for something that's a good dark drawing pencil. I've got one here that's water soluble, which is quite nice. It gives nice dark areas if I want it to. And I've got some water soluble crayons as well, some neo colour crayons, and these are nice. I picked out this red, which is my cadmium red here, this orangey scarlet red, which is really nice over these blues. Posca pens, if you've got them. These white pens can be nice as well for a white line. Again, try and use them on their side. You just get a much more characterful line if you use a pen on its side. So I look forward to seeing how you interpret this task, whether you're doing this with symbols like maps, whether you're going out on location and doing some sketching, whether you're just trying to evoke a feeling of a place. Here's one that I took out with me on a walk. And some of the little sketches I've made in here are very much actually looking and observing what I was seeing. So, for example, the trees here and the distant hills that I was seeing beyond. Or here, this holloway, this deep cut track that we get around here in Devon, these deep cut tracks. But I was using my marks quite symbolically. I was really feeling how this track had been worn away over time as I walked down through the woods. But some of my pages are just much more a feeling, like being up on top of this windy ridge. It was crazy up there, it was really wild. So I was just sort of feeling this, drawing a feeling of the wind. And these marks that I made with my cadmium orangey red, orange really, were the bird song, because I just kept hearing this bird song everywhere. So many of my drawings have got this, which just for me symbolises the bird song. So this little sketchbook now is a record for me. It's a really lovely record and a reference and a reminder of that particular walk on that particular day. And I will not forget that walk now. It's really, the lovely thing with drawing is that it kind of, it draws an experience, it internalises an experience that we have. So, do share what you do in the group, share some of your pages, what you've done. There will be an extension activity in a fortnight's time that I'll suggest with these. And any of you who are booked on to my Adventurous Painters next module, I do encourage you to make some of these, because they'll be a really useful resource and a reference for you on that module. And any of you who aren't aware of what I do, the module, the program that I run, the Adventurous Painters program that I run, do head to my website if you're interested. It's FionaGodfreyArt.com, and you'll also find the links in various places in the group, including in the group description. So have a look at that, because if you enjoy this, it gives you a little bit of a feeling for the kind of projects and tasks that I set on that program. It's a 12-week program with 10 playful experimental painting challenges. And the next theme, the next module, which starts in May, the theme is going to be inspired by the outdoors. So there will be some tasks that invite you to engage with your outdoor environment in these kind of exciting, creative, expressive ways. And I'm really looking forward to this next module. We're going to be doing a lot with colour to start with. It's going to be the first theme that we open the module with. Really working on sort of gorgeous colours, gorgeous landscape palettes that we can create. And I thought it was really interesting in this little sketchbook, because having used blue and brown as my colours, what I've actually ended up with are some lovely greens, these lovely turquoisey browny greens. So we will be thinking about green on the module. It's not an easy colour when it comes out straight from a tube, but it's a lovely project to explore some really exciting, unusual ways of creating green and using green in context of sort of landscape inspired work. So, as I say, there are, if any of you are interested, head to my website, get yourself booked on. It starts in May, and there are still some spaces available. I have got a good sized group already now who've booked. So the module will definitely be running. We've got a lovely group, and it's a special experience. This current spring group have been really, really enjoying themselves on the module and producing some amazing work. So, okay, so share your sketchbooks with us and have fun making them, and I look forward to seeing what you do.